Yes, I'm just calling to reserve my tickets to the Easter parade. I intend to wear my finest bonnet with all the frills upon it. Too late? Ticket office closed before Easter. That figures. So there are many ways to celebrate Easter with baskets and colorful eggs, but why not celebrate it the Betamax Blocker way with Easter movies? Believe it or not, though it's not Christmas and it's not Halloween, there are indeed Easter movies out there. So let's take a look at a few. My phony baloney at the beginning, a reference to the 1948 musical classic Irving Berlin's Easter Parade. Fred Astaire, Judy Garland. A fun movie, not my favorite Fred Astaire film, but anything with Irving Berlin songs and a score by him is good in my book. Got some very memorable parts too, like the title song and a couple of swells, things like that. Part of the MGM Classic Musical series there. Just for you. And it even came with this little promotional postcard here to get your musical lovers t-shirt there. Only $5. What do you know? Mail that in and see what happens. Oh wait, it expired January 31st, 1987. Oh well, so I was a few years too late. There we go, close up our Easter parade. Many people probably don't think of musicals when they think of Easter time. They might think of religious epics, of which there are many, and some I don't even have in my collection, like The Greatest Story Ever Told or Quo Vadis. Start with my favorite religious epic, one I have reviewed on this channel before, 1932's The Sign of the Cross. Charles Laughton there in the center as Emperor Nero, Frederick March as Marcus Superbus. Very different from other religious epics, especially ones by Cecil DeMille. We'll get to him more in a second here. But this one talking about the persecution of Christians in ancient Rome. Jesus and other biblical characters don't intervene. This is solely based on why they were persecuted and who could be trusted and who couldn't, and ultimately how they were killed. And despite being a very pious film and showing the dedication of Christian followers, it also is extremely graphic, many brutal torture scenes. And as it was made in 1932, before the Hays Code, we have some nudity and we have some other things that really highlight Roman decadence and bacchanalia more so than later films would. It's a very fascinating watch though, and one that I highly recommend. This is the original 1932. There is an edited reissue which replaces the gore scenes with like a prologue set in World War II in Rome, and it's all like a flashback. I don't know, I've never seen that version, but it's pretty interesting. A lot different, I think, than what we'd expect. Speaking of Cecil B. DeMille, The Ten Commandments. This is perhaps the quintessential Easter film. Many of us are familiar with it, even if we've never seen it. This is the fancy deluxe box there, which has the 1920s and 1950s version. So you open up that little window, and it folds out. There you go, get some of the glare off. This last disc is the 1920s version. The 20s version's different because it's half the Old Testament and the other half is set in the 1920s. Here's the reverse side there. I don't know, I think that kind of takes away from the story. Everybody has different views on the Ten Commandments. I think it was Danny Peary who wrote, some people see it as silly and campy fun, and others treat it with great reverence. I could go either way. But a great cast and very well made. Definitely an enjoyable watch for any religious observance. And of course, another one that everyone is at least passingly familiar with. I bought this many years ago. You can see it was marked down on sale. The Ben-Hur collection. This is the 1959 and 1925 versions. The 1959 one is best remembered today, the one with Charlton Heston, and it's in color and all that jazz. So we have a big case that opens up there. We'll get to the booklet here last. I like Ben-Hur. I mean, it has aged, and sometimes, like the Ten Commandments, it's so busy being grandiose that it's kind of, you know, obsessed with itself. But all told, it does a good job. The movie's on 2 discs there, and there's bonus features in the 1920s one. I really like the 1920s one, which is both black and white and color. It has like a couple color scenes, like the festivals and things. I love Ramon Navarro. He's my favorite silent film actors. So I prefer the 20s one, but you gotta like the 50s one too. Charlton Heston driving his chariot. A planet where apes evolved from men? Oh wait, wrong movie. So this is a miniature reproduction of the original 1959 Ben-Hur, I guess, movie book, something like that. You see the story of the making of, and I don't know exactly how or why this was released. I don't know all the details, but my grandmother had the actual 1959 making of book, and she gave that to me several years before she passed on. The miniature version doesn't have all of the pages. It takes a few out, but for the most part it's all there. You get some nice photos and things, and you know, behind the scenes stuff, casting, and full color illustrations. I know it's not going to show up the best on this camera, but you get the idea. You know, it's a good film. I remember having to watch it in high school when we talked about ancient Rome and, you know, bread and circus kind of stuff. The chariot race remains perhaps one of the greatest action scenes committed to film, and I think even young people today would get a lot out of that. You know, there are a lot of characters and maybe a little too much going on, but for the most part, it's a good film and definitely worth a watch. One that I'm not as keen on is The Robe, and I've only watched this a couple times, and I cannot remember much of anything about it. As much as I love Richard Burton, this one just doesn't do it for me. It's got a good cast, though, and it evokes the period feel well. Of course, the title robe being Jesus' garment that he wore during the crucifixion and whatnot. I have it on DVD, too, but I figured I'd show off my VHS so you can see that classic 20th Century Fox box art. Someday I gotta do another VHS collection thing. I did all my CBS Fox ones. I'll go through and do some of the other ones. And hey, it only cost me 38 cents at Goodwill. There you go. Several years ago. 2 more to do, and I think we'll be done. You can get back to your Easter holidays. One that is decidedly less reverent than the previous films we've mentioned, Monty Python's Life of Brian. I will say, and this will be a very unpopular opinion, this is my least favorite of the 4 Python films. The Meaning of Life is my favorite by far, but it has some very funny gags in it. I guess making a crucifixion comedy is a little bit different, maybe a little niche, and indeed this was banned in several countries. But, you know, Graham Chapman is an excellent actor. You know, he can carry a Python film, with support from the others, of course. And Always Look on the Bright Side of Life is one of the most iconic comedy movie endings ever, and there are some great gags in there, too. Some of them are a little too bawdry for me to repeat here, but, you know, worth a watch. Reminds me a lot of A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum, or Mel Brooks' later History of the World Part 1, both very similar. I guess I could have even included that today, as it deals with the Last Supper, but we'll let it go. One more, and I couldn't find my VHS copy of it, but I know I have it. This was one I used to watch every Easter. Bottom there you see Sidney Poitier, Lilies of the Field, where he plays the journeyman carpenter who has to help the German nuns build their new chapel. It's such a great film, a favorite of mine ever since I was a teenager. I wanted to show the VHS because it's a really ugly cover that I thought would be good for some laughs, but such a great movie, very inspiring. And he helps these nuns out and unites the whole community. And then he kind of goes off and does his own thing, too, and learns some life lessons in the process. And I've never read the book. I have a copy, but I've never actually read it. But I always enjoyed that. And Sidney Poitier, great actor, and very greatly missed. He passed away not too long ago. So, do you have any favorite Easter films or Easter traditions? Please do share them below. I always like to read your comments. And I'll see you next time. We'll get some Beach Boys stuff in, and maybe a few other surprises too. Till then, my friends, have a very safe and happy Easter, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.